Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about HTTP verbs in MVC. So let's start. As you must be knowing that HTTP is a stateless and hypertext transfer protocol, and it basically works on the client server model. In the diagram you can see that when a client is sending a request to the server, when I say client here, that means a browser. So when browser send a request to the server, and after processing the request, some response is again sent back to the client in the form of HTML, right? So during this process in the request and response cycle, it has to go with set of rules. It needs to follow set of rules, or we can say a kind of protocol, and that protocol is called HTTP protocol, right? So basically, we can say that the main purpose of HTTP protocol is to establish a connection with the server and then send HTML pages back to the client or on the client machine, that is your browser, right? There are some common HTTP verbs that are most commonly used, or we can see that are most widely used in the industry. You can see on the screen that is get, post, get, post, put, delete, and many more options do we have, like options, patch, etc. Right? So basically, if we talk about get HTTP verbs, that is basically used for the fetching any resource or for fetching the records from the database, right? And the post verb, that is basically used to insert a record or insert a resource in your database table. And put is basically used as an update operation, we can say. And delete is basically, by the name it is clear, we can delete any record from database table, whether it's a soft delete or hard delete, right? And all these verbs are basically used on the top of the action method as an attribute. So these are basically used to decorate the action method, right? So let's look into the picture in the Visual Studio. So I'm using the previous example that we discussed about the temp data. So I'm taking the same application, and in this application, let's create one new controller, right? To make you understand how basically HTTP verbs work. And let's name it, let's suppose employee controller. Yes, so we can see our employee controller has been created. And let's suppose for this index section method, uh, let's name it, let's suppose get employee details, right? And for using HTTP get, right, let me tell you one more thing. In MVC application, each and every action method is by default your get method, your we can say this, your get. So each and every action method is your by default HTTP get request, right? But to make you understand how we can make this action method HTTP get request, for that we need to decorate this with an attribute that is called HTTP get. In the square bracket we need to write, you can see. And as soon as I have typed, you can see all the HTTP verbs. We can see get, delete, options, head, post, patch. So according to our need, we can use. But normally in the industry, we used to deal with get, post, put, and delete. These four, right? And most of the time, these two get and post. So now, after applying this HTTP get attribute, now this action method is specific to, we can see that has been created for accepting the get request, right? Although all the action methods are by default HTTP get request, right? And let's suppose we want to, as I told you, that this get method, this get verb, HTTP get verb is basically used to fetch details from the database on your server, right? Or to retrieve any kind of data from the database table. For that, we need to pass some parameter, right? Let's say int ID we are passing, any ID passing, and on the basis of this ID parameter, we will make here a database layer call, right? And according to our need, we can make a database call over here, and we can fetch the data and we can return it to the view, and that particular view will be returned to the in the form of HTML to the client machine on the browser, right? So to just make you understand, I have shown you that how we can create a HTTP GET request on any top action method, right? And now let's come to the slide, and now we will be discussing about HTTP post, right? For that, for that, let's create one more action method, right? And let's name this insert employee details, right? As I told you that post request is basically used to create a resource in your database table, or we can say to create a new record in your database table, right? So, and for creating a new record or creating a new profile, we can say, or creating a new resource in the database, for that we need to pass data in this parameter list. That may be come from your query string, that can be come from your in any object or in any model, right? So let's normally we used to pass an object of a class, or we can say a model, right? So let me take one model for you to make you understand. So I'm going to create one model. I'm going to create one normal class. Let's name it uh, EMP, em employee. So I'm taking a short form, clicking on this add button. And now let's add some few properties. Right. And let's take it ID. This we can take name, and this we can take your age. Right. Now we have created one model, and this model we are going to use on this employee controller. So to use this employee model, we need to import it from the namespace. That is name of the application is your temp data, and then we are going to use models on this controller, uh, not controllers. We are going to use models for this, right? And now we can we can call this. You can see now we can call this this employee model and this employee controller. So let's call this. We can pass as an object, we can say, and we can pass object of this model, right? And after passing data in this employee object or in this employee model, we can call a database call over here. We can see we can call a database call over here, a database layer call actually, and that will create a resource, that will save a record, or that will create a record in your database table according to your need, right? And now to make this action method of post request, for that the same thing we have to do. We need to decorate this action method with our HTTP post this time, not get, right? We can see over here. Now this specific action method is bounded to accept only of HTTP post request, right? And normally the data coming from the query string or in the header or in the body of your request, right? At this point of time, how we can pass the data from the in the header body or query string. So don't worry, in the upcoming videos when we will be discussing routing, we will be discussing each and everything in detail, that how can we pass data from browser to this action method, and how the control will come, and how the data is being passed in this employee object, or if any data is coming in the query string, right? So don't worry at this point of time. Simply understand that how we can make specific action method a specific type of request, whether it's a get request or whether it's a HTTP post request, right? So that was for HTTP post request. Now we are going to discuss about put. We can see in the slide now put then delete, right? So let's, and for put let's create one more action method for discussing HTTP put means let's suppose we are having an existing record, right? And we need to make some changes in that record. In that case we go for this http put. So basically this put basically is used to update any resource, or put is basically used to update any record in your database table, right? So and for updating any record in your database table, normally we need two parameters. Let's say id of that particular record. Let's say on the basis of this id we will be modifying, or we will be altering the particular record, and what column or what field or what value we want to modify, that second parameter we can pass as an object, we can see over here. So that's a new value to change the any property in your database table column, right? And to make this action method of http put, we will do the same. We will decorate this action method with http put this time, right? Now this action method is specifically bounded to accept the request that is of http put type, right? And now the last one is delete. So by the name it is clear. When we want to delete any record in your database, or when we want to delete any resource from a database, in that case we call our delete. So let's name it this. Let's name this delete. Act, delete action method name, right? And we would be deleting our resource or any record on the basis of any id, right? So let's say we are passing an id parameter, right? And now this action method we are going to make of type http delete, right? We can see over here http delete, right? And on the basis of this id we will make a database call layer. Basically we will call a database layer call over here, and we can delete a particular resource in your database table, right? So if you see uh, in this, that for get we are passing the id parameter on which, on the basis of this, we will be fetching the record. And in this on the basis of this employee object, we are passing data to create a new resource in your database table. And over here we are passing two parameters, id and employee object. That means on the basis of this id parameter we will be updating, or we will be altering any record in your database table. And on the basis of this id parameter we will be deleting a specific resource or record in your database table. And rest of the things are same. We can see we will make a database call layer. We'll make a call to database layer that is created in your separate class library. We can create your separate assembly, and accordingly we can do the required changes, right? So in this video we have discussed what are the normally http verbs, that is get, post, put, delete, right? So that is all for http verbs. In the upcoming videos we will be discussing about all this thing in a detail when we will be working with the routing, and we can see how data are passed in these parameters in a very detail. So in last, I would say, friends, please like and subscribe my channel so that you can get all the latest notification in the upcoming of my upcoming videos in the future, right? So that's it. Thank you. Bye bye.